Hello, welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa. Let's get started.
Well, hello. We're here today with Wialillian and Lorraine, and of course, my co host Teresa. This is our first community table. We are beyond excited.
So excited.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about human resources related issues. And of course, that's very important. It impacts all of us. We have with us again Wialillian and Lorraine, and they have between them over 40 years of HR experience. And as Lorraine correctly pointed out, HR has evolved through the years and it's changed. And they have had to keep up with the changes and have been instrumental in some of those changes. So we're excited about the knowledge that they're going to share with us today. And we're hoping that what we offer today will be of value to people already employed who are in the workplace, and that we hope that something we're going to share today will allow you to further solidify your career, determine where you want to go, and this will be another resource for you as you plan your next move and plan how to thrive where you are. So we're going to get started. The first thing we want to talk about today is brand excellence. Let's talk about what does that mean when you talk about your brand?
I always say that your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah. That's exactly
Oh
right.
my goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
And I always say we want to extend the best part of us when we talk about our brand, our appearance, how we speak, how we conduct ourselves publicly and privately, what people see when they see us, and what do they say when they don't have us in front of them. To me, that's a kind of a compilation, definition for brand presence and brand excellence. It's so important, so important.
That's so true. That's so true. And you know what? I mean, when you made the point that what people say when you're present versus what they say when you're not there, because many times, in the workplace, let's just face it, sometimes it's not the easiest place to be, and you run up against all different types of personalities, different motives, different agendas, but what they say about you when you're not there really speaks to, in terms of their perception and their perception of who you are, their perception of your abilities, their perception of even if you're worthy to even be in that role you're now in, let alone to ascend even higher. So that's an important discussion.
And I call that your reputation.
Yeah.
Your reputation precedes you. So even before you get to that place or that position or even sometimes that organization, your reputation comes first. So that's what's discussed before you even appear.
Yeah.
It's your reputation.
Yeah.
I had the assignment in the police department, and when I went, I was transferred there. So when I went and I talked to the chief of police and asked how was I selected, it was based on my reputation. He had never met me, but it was my reputation that caused him to say, okay, I'll take her. I'll have her assigned to the police department.
Wow. Yeah.
So that reputation is so important.
Yeah. That's right.
In your organization, wherever you land, wherever you are.
Right. Yeah. Well, but that's wonderful when you got a great reputation. But how do you establish then that reputation or that brand, if you will? How do you get there?
You establish it by being a hard worker, and I say hard worker by being dependable, responsible. Your performance, your overall performance, how you treat people, how you respond to folks, both those in your immediate presence and those not. All of those items make up your reputation. So it's relationships, it's your performance, it's your appearance,
Yeah.
how you talk.
Yeah.
All of that will make for your reputation.
Mhm.
Now, some people do have not so good of a reputation, but it can be repaired.
Mhm.
I always say it can be repaired. As long as you show up,
Mhm.
that's 50%, and the other 50% you can work on.
Mhm. Mhm.
I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, okay, that's helpful. But I mean, because in my past positions, I've experienced when I've talked to people on the phone, customer service folks, and maybe they didn't know who you were, and you experience people who are rude, who don't return calls, who aren't responsive, but then when they realize, okay, well, this was a different person I was speaking to, then you see that difference in behavior. And I'm always thinking, but you should, I don't care who calls you, you should have this level of responsiveness. But when you don't see that, that tells me about that person's brand.
For
And
sure.
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a black mark on their brand.
Right.
Because they behave one way with you and another with someone else,
Yeah.
and then you will probably having to recommend them. That will be in your mind
Yeah.
about how they treat people the same.
Right, yeah.
And that's called being consistent
Yeah.
Yeah.
with how you treat people, whether it's on the phone, whether they're in your presence, but you have that consistent level of treatment towards people in any dealings that you may have with them. Any way you handle folks.
No matter their title.
No matter their title, I mean, whether you're talking to the mayor, the CAO, or you're talking to the refuge collector, it's the same. It's consistent. It's honest. It's truthful. Right. Whatever that brand is that you want to project, you should project it across the board and be consistent with it.
I guess it's the same as when you think about, let's say, Coca-Cola or Google or Apple even. You know, they have the brand of being the best in what it is that they present. So it's the same thing,
Yes.
except for you're an individual and it's your brand that you're trying to get people to see. You know, it's no different. Like if Google were to allow some negative, I don't know, anything about. Big thing these days is if they let something or personal, if they let something happen and then their brand is tarnished, you know, then people will no longer use them. Maybe Google was a bad example for that, but you get what I'm saying, right? So
For sure.
it's all in what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's all it goes back to that.
Well, the recent example is the CEO of McDonald's, that he had a relationship with
I
someone.
saw that.
Yeah,
So
someone.
he did what?
Yeah.
So they fired him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he did what?
He had a relationship
With a subordinate.
with a subordinate staff, and
Yeah.
in McDonald's, that's a no-no.
Yeah.
So they had to let him go because their reputation was at stake, and they said, coming from the top, if we don't deal with it with the CEO, then that sends a message to those in the organization. So again, it's your reputation and how you want people to, perceive you and, know you in the organization. And I always say you want to have a good reputation.
Well, and you know what? That brings up an interesting point, because you're talking about the CEO, but I think through my years of management, one of the problems I'd see is that everybody in the organization has to be concerned about the reputation of the organization.
Indeed.
Even if you're not the CEO, if somebody knows that you're employed by this specific organization, you're representing that organization. I don't care if you have a big fancy title, but people start making assessments about your organization just basically from you, from what they see in you, from how you conduct yourself. And so that, I wish that people would get that point, that you're carrying the organization with you. And when I used to do trainings for new managers. I say that to them, that recognize that, you know, you can end up in the paper, or people make, even your neighbor, they're making assessments about the validity of the organization from you based on what you're bringing to the table. And that's unfortunate, particularly if it's a person whose reputation is not a good one. You're impacting everybody else. Yeah.
And I think when we talk about brand excellence, I think there has to be such a high level of consciousness about us, with us as individuals, that this is important to me. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to be, because my brand excellence is who I am. Mm-hmm. And it can't be a half effort. It has to be at the core and the center of who we are. We need to study what it means to have brand excellence. We need to understand all the components of it, because it's not something that you, as Cedric the Entertainer says, you learn all willy-nilly. It is a consciousness.
Yeah.
It is a conscious effort. And you can't half-step with it.
No.
It has to be something that you are every day, everywhere you go, whether you're sitting in your corporate office or whether you're in the grocery store, whether you're at a conference, you are representing your company.
Well, but I'm going to represent some of the younger listeners, because I could hear them saying, you know what, that's just too much. That's intense. That you asking way too much of me. Mm-hmm. When I'm not in these walls, I should be able to do what I want and conduct myself in any kind of way that I want. And I just think you're asking way too much, because I get that impression from particularly some of the younger generations when you talk about work and the expectations. It's like, you know what, that might have been then, but that's not the way it's done now.
Well, unfortunately, that is the case, because with social media, and I've been to conferences where what you put on Facebook and what you put in, you know, on email, all of that is public information. So we need to advise that you should be careful about that information, because it will come back to haunt you. Unfortunately, employers do look at that information
They
that
do.
you put on Facebook, and they will use that to make a decision about your employment. That's the unfortunate part.
Yeah.
So when you say that, oh, that's too much and I need to be on my best behavior all the time, well, yeah, you do.
Wow.
You do.
Well, that's
For the kind, if you want some level of success to move along in an organization, be it the current organization or if you go somewhere else, that information is out there and they will use it. Mm-hmm. They're not going to tell you, but they do use it. They go to the internet, they'll go to your Facebook page, they'll go to chat box over all those social media avenues, and they will look.
Wow.
Now, they're not going to tell you, yeah, I saw you on Facebook and so and so and so and so, but be mindful that that information is out there, and they will look at that information and will make a decision on using that information on your not continued employment, but perhaps new employment if you're moving on to another organization. Especially in those areas of law enforcement, finance, those big, you know, areas where you may have some large responsibility or where you are interacting with the public.
Well, that's interesting, because I had something happen to me, I guess about 5 years ago. A new person that I hired on the team, when he came in, he told me, he said, well, I felt like this was a good place to join because I looked at your LinkedIn profile, I went on Facebook. In addition to talking to people, he had all this, and that had never happened. And when he left my office, I was like, wow, I never thought about that. He was like, yeah, I went on all of that because I did not want to align myself with a manager that I felt like was going to be a problem or didn't have these specific skills in this role. And that had never happened to me before.
Well, I had, I know of two situations that
Excuse me.
Two examples related to what you just explained prior to Lou's comments, Lorraine. A young lady graduated from a very prestigious college with a very high GPA. She was a partier. Her Facebook demonstrated that.
I ain't mad at her. I used to be one in the day, back in the day. Go on.
She was trying really hard. All of her fellow classmates were all with lesser credentials than she. They were all getting jobs.
Wow.
But she wasn't even getting the interview. And her aunt told her, who's my dear friend, you got to take that mess off of Facebook.
Absolutely.
Once she closed her Facebook account, started getting interviews because they couldn't then find that information.
She cleaned it up.
Yeah. She did, and so that there was that one. Another, there was a young man who posted some had certain beliefs that were detrimental to one race, and he had nothing to do with his job, but comments that he made started to trend. So people weren't even looking for his comments, but because they were trending, they showed up on one's feed, which then caused him to lose his job because it got back to his company, and it was because of the comments that he was making. And this guy was responsible. He was a manager of people who were part of those that he was making negative comments about, you know. And so they let him go on the spot. Like, he packed up his security, packed him up, and
sent him on his way.
Sent him on his way.
Well, there was a recent case like that in Chesterfield with the police, I think, out there. That one of the officers made some remarks.
Law enforcement for sure, but also in other venues or other careers, people more so than, because I don't really use social media that much, but young people do. And they need to be mindful. I'm not saying don't do it, but just be mindful that that information can be accessed by organizations that you may want to be employed with or are currently employed with, and that information can be used against you. And they won't tell you, you know, I looked at Facebook and I saw you, you know, acting crazy. They won't say that.
Okay.
They'll use another excuse or no excuse, and they just won't hire you or won't get an interview. And you will never know why. You will start until someone will say, maybe you need to look at your social media accounts and see what's on there and clean it up.
Well, Teresa, in that young lady's that instance, she had no idea until her aunt said, expressed that to her, that might have been the reason. None. Wow.
Or she hadn't considered it,
Young
and
people,
she fought her on it. Actually, she didn't want to shut it down. She said, just like you said, it's her private life. It has nothing to do with her abilities.
But it has everything to do with your brand presence.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether you believe it or not, it's very real.
Exactly.
And when we talk about being in the workplace and we talk about aspirations in the workplace for growing into new roles, into new leadership roles, and all that, it will always come back to the perception of you that's out there. And many times we have created that perception, good or bad.
Yes.
We've created that, so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're creating the right and perception about us, because nobody can do it but us. And it's quite important.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So before we wrap up that piece on brand excellence, then, so what did you say would be what makes up brand excellence? What are people looking for? I think, Lorraine, you said something about showing up and doing the job, and you referenced the appearance and how you conduct yourself. And I think we also talked about just your reputation, how you're presenting it.
Being consistent.
Being consistent with that. Being concerned about relationships. Being concerned about your social media presence. And anything that you're putting out there is being viewed in any way by the public. And again, I would offer that even if it's not on social media, it's how you're conducting yourself in your relationship. So, all right. Thank you all so much. And thank you, listeners, for joining in. We look forward to the next episode. Thank you, Lorraine and Wialillian.
When we know better, we do better.